Queen here, live after money. I thought I'd make a little video about how I go off in a different direction when I'm making something arty out of generally fabric. I call myself a textile artist, so I've got a house full of bits and bobs of fabric and all kinds of things that I collect so that I can make something, pictures generally, but anything else that comes to mind. But I start off with a bit of an idea in my head of what I might like to achieve and what I might think the end result will be. But quite often I change direction part of the way through it, and it ends up something not what I first thought of. But I've just finished a piece actually, so I thought I would give you a little insight into how I arrived at my destination. But I have been making these little spirals out of felt. So there's, I've got loads of them here. I'll just see if I can lift them up. I started with I make small parts first, generally make small parts, and then think about what I might do with them. So I've got these spirals made with all different coloured felts and all wrapped up, all stitched together, and so I've got a box full of those. So I thought, right, I need a background for them. I need to actually stitch them onto something. I need to arrange them into a design or whatever. I thought about doing the hearts as I did with the buttons, the button heart. I could do the same with these. So I did a background, but it has worked out that these don't really fit on the background that I've made. So I'm going to have to think of another idea for these. Probably go back to the old idea of the heart. So I've still got those not being used. And what I did come up with was, I thought, a landscape. Right, a landscape. I was going to make the spirals into trees. I like folk art, I like colour, and I like landscapes that don't really look like landscapes. Not the landscapes that you would see when you walk about, but my interpretation of a landscape. So I made a landscape, big piece of felt, and chose the background felt. It didn't matter what the background felt was going to be because it was all going to get covered. So I decided on the size of it. So it was going to be that wide and that high, that tall. And I drew a bit of a design on paper first. Very simple, just long pieces that go across the page or the piece. Sky 1, sky 4, that was the top, the sky 3. So all these fit together to make the landscape. So these were my templates. And then I chose different felts, because felt is so easy to work with, and cut each one out in a different coloured felt. So, and then I'll get it to show you now the result of all this. And here we have it. This is my landscape. Now I'm hoping that I am in shot, because I'm just guessing. I'm going to get up and have a look and see if you can see what I want you to see. Yeah, more or less. There you are, that's my landscape. So, and it's a wall hanging. I did think about framing it, but I couldn't decide on a frame that would go with the actual picture. So how did I start it? Well, as you can see, the background is all in place first, and then I started from the bottom upwards, adding anything, stitching, embroidery stitching, more felt. And the first idea was to put a big sun up there, big sun with rays radiating out, probably orange, yellow. Put a tree in that side, trunk and branches reaching right across, but a very simple tree with just a few leaves on it. But then I thought, I've put so much stitching on this and I've decorated it that much. See my little trees? You see, that is the horizon, and there is the pine forest that you can see in the distance, and there's chain stitch, there's yes, I can't remember the name of it now. But yeah, the clouds are hand stitched, a little bit of machine stitching across the red. Mostly is all hand stitching. The only machine is this across there, and that edge as well. That's the only hand stitching there is. It's all machine stitching. It's all hand stitched. So different stitches. But then I thought, if I put anything on top of there, it's going to hide it all, and I quite like that background. So I whittled it down and whittled it down. I thought, do away with the sun. Don't need a sun really. And a tree would just block so much off. So why not make some long stalks and put a flower on each one. The flowers are ordinary fabric, Suffolk puffs, and a little bit of black felt in the centre with French knots, and purple French knots there. So you can actually now see through that to the background. I didn't want the background to be completely swamped by what was in the foreground. Maybe I shouldn't have done quite so much stitching on the background, and then I could have made a tree the focal point. But now I think this all sort of blends in quite well actually. And for the back, obviously that's got a hell of a lot of stitching around the back, so I needed to put extra stitching because I've got layers. I've actually got 3 layers here now. So I put a back on, and I've used dark blue fabric, plain dark blue fabric. I put the first back on, but then I put stitches through from the front to that back because I didn't want the layers separating. I wanted to keep it flat, so I didn't want them sort of ballooning out. But then of course I've got stitches on the back that I want to hide, so I had to put a second back on it. So all I've done is hand stitched a second layer along the back to hide all the stitches that were on the first layer, because I do like a tidy back. I put the loops on. I quite like things with loops on. I put the loops on, and this is just a wooden dowel which I have put yellow fabric on the ends, and I've used yellow wool to wrap it. So I could have painted it, but I thought, no, I don't need to paint it. Paint's too messy, so wrap it with wool. So there you have it, my new artwork, and I'm very pleased with it. And what I'll do is hang it up behind me here, on top of this one I've already got here. I've got one nail in the wall. I've got one nail in the wall there, and it does for everything. I hope the lighting's good, because it's quite difficult to get good lighting in this house. So I'll just give you a close-up of, I haven't told you how big it is. I'll put the measurements in the box at the top, but you've got my shadow there, look. So let's have a bit of a close up there, so you can get a little bit of the detail. Oops, I'm not sure how close I can go. The ridges there, this is actually a pale green, although I can see it looks blue on the screen. The ridges, I've sandwiched some cords in between the two layers, and I've stitched in between so that it gives it that ridge. Just thought I would try something new. I like trying something new. Oops, I'm wobbling a bit here. Tell me to keep still. Here. And we've got a bit of shadow in there, but there's your pine forest. Small piece of the fabric just stitched on. Oh dear, getting a lot of shadows, sorry. I'm just not very good at camera work, but let's just zoom out a little bit. So there is the whole thing. Oops, there you are, the whole thing, and I'm really pleased with it. I think it's nice. It will go into my collection, and I'll have it hung up here for a week or two, and then I'll wrap it up and I'll put it away, and then when I've got a good stock of my art, I will have a look at maybe having an exhibition somewhere, and maybe eventually it will sell eventually, but I'm not bothered whether it sells or not. I don't make things to sell. It's my hobby and I enjoy doing it. So there we go. I'll click you off now, and my arm's aching. My arm's aching, and I've run out of words and I can't think of anything else to say. But I'm moving on to the next project now. As soon as one's finished, I'm raring to get started on another one. So I'll sign off now. This is me, Queen. Life after money. Bye.